Welcome to Future Training Solutions' first Train the Trainer session. Today I'm going to take you through the prep for your initial class, but also how that first class would go, just as if I was teaching it today. So before you start, you'll receive a Train the Trainer box that has in it a whole lot of things, from assessments to name badges. You'll have your own name badge, which we'll provide. You'll also have a box of these, which will have the trainee/volunteers names in it, which you can give out. They need to be given out on the first day. They need to wear them for all volunteer activities, but it's also a good idea for them to use them in class. You'll have a class schedule that gives you the phone numbers, emails, names of all the people that are attending, and also what classes they'll be participating in. Not everyone is going to start at level 2. We will have some people coming in just at level 3, so we'll make sure we provide that so that you're aware. It'll also have on it your confirmed venue, so you know where you're going to be holding them. And then you'll have workbooks, assessments and care plans. So I'll just show you what they look like. So the first workbook that we'll go through today is this one, the basic workbook. You'll have a care plan, which is a level 2 care plan, which is Hilary Bronson. That's just a sample. And you'll also have the basic assessment, which is the assessment questions the trainee will complete after each session. In the box as well, there'll be a range of teaching props, especially when we get to level 3. There's things that it's better for the trainees to handle, especially when you're talking about things like incontinence products. To actually have those makes a big difference. You'll have a DVD or one of the computer sticks that has my sessions on it, really showing you how I would teach the class, or highlighting to you what the important things are when teaching a class. You'll have a volunteer timesheet that looks a bit like this, and you'll also have your own timesheet. Right, they'll also have a list of activities which would have been designed for each area. So here's a sample one of Tauranga, and it'll tell you what roles are available, the days, the hours, the skills needed, what's involved. As the trainer, you're not expected to get involved in any of these. Refer them back to Future Training Solutions if they have any questions about completing their volunteer hours. In saying that, you will be required to give out the info sheets at the start of each session, and from time to time you may be asked to prompt or remind them. Okay, and lastly you will have a sign-in sheet. I'll just show you what that looks like. That looks a bit like this, and you'll need everyone in the class to sign in with each lesson they attend. This is quite important. It just helps us track where people may fall off attending class and what those reasons are, and then I can follow up from at a later point. Okay, so we'll go back to the class plan. So when it comes to your first class, you're going to want to arrive at 30 minutes early, because there's a lot of things that you need to get organised, as you can see with the amount of documents that you need to get out, but also you want to make sure that you've been able to get in, get the chairs and seating correct, boil the kettle, stuff like that, just to make it so that when people arrive they feel really welcome. So as a teacher within, or a tutor within the Future Training Solutions program, it's important for us that you focus on rapport. It's important that you show a holistic way of caring for them as trainees, because that's what you're expecting them to do for seniors. We do need to keep order within the class, but we do need to be really respectful that we're dealing with adults, and adults that have generally had a bad learning experience, and a lot of people carry that with them their whole lives, you know, going back from school years. So just be careful how you interact with these people. You want to be, what we say is, it's a professional friendship. So it's a friendship within the role of a trainer and within the time frames of being a trainer. So you're going to put out all the sign-on sheets, all the workbooks, the volunteer activities, and all the handouts that you need to put out. And as people come in, offer them coffee or tea, welcome them to the class, and just start asking them things like, you know, why did they choose to start the course? You know, have they done caregiving before? Things like that, that will help you get to know them. Okay, so once everyone's arrived and you've got everything out, everyone's signed in, they've got the coffees, it's time to get started. It's a good time to set house rules, things like turning off cell phones, when you'll be having a break, any emergency procedures for the building that you're in, and also just interaction rules. And sometimes that can be something that you all put together, and it can be things like respecting each other, not interrupting when someone else is talking, cleaning up your dishes at the end of the session, you know, whatever it is that's going to make it work well. As a trainer, the most important thing is that you're encouraging that interaction, that you are respecting everybody's input, and there are times where people are quite off track, and it's doing that in a respectful way that doesn't stop them from interacting in the future. Right, so now I'm going to start our first session on the basic training workbook. The most important thing for people to know is that they don't need to follow you through this. Some people get so distracted as to where you are in the workbook that they forget to hear. So make that really clear from the start that that's not a important part. So the things we're going to cover today is the care available in New Zealand, what it's like to age and the common myths of aging, aging in place, positive aging, the philosophy of care, approaches to care, code of rights, and what the caregiver's rights are as well. It can be a good idea as well at this point to do an icebreaker. Do whatever, I've got a list that is provided in your kit. Use whichever one you feel most comfortable with and most comfortable for that group of people. Okay, so let's take you through the book. Also, it's a good idea to explain all of the documents that you've put out for the trainee, what they're for, explaining that when they're going to answer their assessment questions. So let's just do that. So there's a range of documents that you have there in front of you. You have your basic workbook, and it's important that you know it's not, you don't need to follow me, and everything I do say is within this workbook. It is up to you whether you would like to purchase the books. If you do, it is $50 for the set of 4. If you would prefer not to, completely okay. You just need to be aware you can't write on the books, and they need to be returned in a clean, well-kept manner. Okay, you'll also have your assessment. Now your assessment, you'll be given questions at the end of each class, which you'll need to answer, and do that at home. If you need any clarification around the questions, please feel welcome to ask us, or to call Future Training Solutions on the 0800 number and get some further information there. Um, the questions range in their difficulty. Some you'll find really easy and some won't be as easy. We'll also discuss at the start of each session what questions you may have found a bit difficult, and we will just we do have a time for us to discuss those. So you've also got a sample care plan, and this is of Hilary Bronson. We're not going to use this today, but we are going to be using it next week. And you'll need this to answer some of the questions. So when it talks about the sample care plan, that's what this is. Okay. You've also got a form that looks a bit like this one. Now this is if you are interested in finding work as a caregiver at the end of the course. Future Training Solutions does provide assistance. Can't guarantee anything, but we'll most certainly try to do our best to find you a placement in the healthcare industry. You also have timesheets. These are what you need to complete at the end of each volunteering session, and it's so that we can capture your hours, so that once you've reached that 15, we can sign you off. They need to be signed off by somebody that is managing that volunteer activity. And if you have any questions on that, please feel welcome to call Future Training Solutions on the 0800 number. So I'm also just going to explain the progression of the course. Right, so I'm going to just take you through our training process because, and this is really important for our trainees to understand, the classes go for 14 weeks. In saying that, it is very possible that you may finish within 13. We do provide the extra week as a, depending on your class, you may find that you run into 14 weeks or it will finish on the expected 13. Just taking you through the weeks. Week 1, generally it's the enrolment, and then we start the classes going from 1 to 14. During this time they'll be doing volunteer hours as well, community volunteer hours, which could range. It could be things from going and visiting someone at a rest home, to working with the hospital, to helping a not-for-profit organisation. So there's a whole range of activities that they may complete. They do have an on-site assessment, and that on-site assessment is really about their interaction with clients. They will work with a trainer on-site in a local rest home. They will be providing personal care, or rather they'll be assisting the trainer to provide personal care for that client. It's important that the trainees understand this, as it can be something that we have had people later on say they didn't really realise, and then they were put in the situation. So please be very clear about it being a personal care situation, and that if they felt uncomfortable in that at any point, they needed to let us know or the trainer know, and we could work something around that. The basic and safety assessments, we do set due times as we go through the weeks, but the cut-off is at 26 weeks. Next, all the assessments, so the advanced assessment is due in after 34 weeks. At this point, they will have an exit interview, and there will be a range of assessment questions. I think there is 10 that I will go through with them just to finish off their training. And from there, we submit their results, and they receive their national certificate from NZQA after 35 to 40 weeks from the training started. So it's important that they understand that. They will receive a completion certificate at 14 weeks, and they will receive that in the post. Right, so at the end of this, each person that attends and completes the course and completes it accurately, providing enough evidence, receives the National Certificate in Health, Disability and Age Support, Foundation Skills Level 2, and if they complete the next section, they'll also receive the Core Competencies Level 3. Right, so let's take you through care in New Zealand. Care in New Zealand can be really difficult to navigate. A lot of people in the community don't know when to start when there is a health concern with a loved one. I will just explain how the health system works. I'll just grab an image. Right, so I'll just explain how our health sector works. It makes it a little bit easier to understand why it's so difficult to navigate. So at the very top, of course, we have the government, and we have the government sector for health, so that's the Ministry of Health. Connected to it is a number of boards and advisories that give advice to the Ministry of Health. These are connected either to hospitals or to local authorities for council health planning. So there are 18 district health boards, and under that there are 29 public hospitals. All the public hospitals receive funding from the Ministry of Health. There's also then a number of private and voluntary providers, either GPs, St John's and so on, that come from there. What it doesn't show is that from the public hospitals, all the community health that's provided in each area, such as rest home health, rest home facilities and home care related facilities, are funded by each hospital board. So each of those has contracts with them to provide that service. There are also privately funded home-based services like Home Instead, where people in the community either aren't eligible for funding or want to have a bit more control around the service that they receive and choose to pay privately for that care. So one of the things that's really interesting to know is that 89% of seniors or the population want to be able to remain at home as long as possible. Home is something that's very important to New Zealanders, and there is most certainly a perception of the type of care that you receive within a rest home or hospital, not necessarily always correct, but there's also the love of home, having all the things around you and so on. So there's been a movement in New Zealand called Ageing in Place. And Ageing in Place came in because of our large ageing population. Right, so I'm not sure how well you can see this, but this is our ageing population in New Zealand. And as you can see, and it's mostly because of the baby boomers that are moving through, we have an extremely high ageing population. New Zealand isn't the highest, but it is one of the highest. And there have been surveys that say that by 2026 we will need in between 12 and 20,000 additional rest home to hospital beds. So because of this, they created a movement called Ageing in Place in order to be able to service the number of people that will be coming through. But as you can imagine, because we've got so many people aging, the age-related illnesses, conditions, all of those are finding an increase as well. So it's also a need for increased dementia-based services, increase of home-based services. And what they expect is that rest homes and hospitals will be receiving people at a higher level of care than they ever did before. So it used to be that you got to 65, you retired, and you literally packed up your bags and moved into a rest home. That was sort of 20, 30 years ago, the way of life. It was part of retirement. It's not so much now. As I said, 90% of people want to be able to stay at home, 89 to 90, I should say. And people are staying there as long as possible. And this aging in place helps that occur. So aging in place also created restrictions around when people could enter a rest home or hospital. So in order to enter a rest home or hospital, you need to be assessed. And that assessment looks at things like your ability to reach up, to stand up, to provide yourself with meals, to do your own personal care, anything that would allow you to look after yourself. And at the end of this assessment, they would then come back and say, well, because of your ability to perform daily activities, this is what we feel you need. So on that assessment, they'll be assessing for personal care assistance, home help assistance, or also looking whether they need 24-hour assistance, which they'll often refer to a rest home at that point. It is important to know, though, that other 24-hour assistance is available. Private home care providers provide 24-hour care, so people that might need that assistance can still remain at home if they want to be able to pay for it privately. And it's a good point, because a lot of people do want to be able to remain at home and aren't offered that opportunity. So there, as I say, there's lots of different services: home-based care, hospices, there's daycare units, which are activity-based units in the community where someone might be able to go from, for example, from 9 till 3, sometimes it's 9 till 5, and then generally family will look after that person at night time. Usually a lot of early stage dementia that can be really good for, or people that spend a lot of time living alone. There are retirement villages. Retirement villages are fantastic. They offer a whole range of different things, but it's important to realise they don't necessarily offer care. So care can be part of it, but if they don't have a progressing village, you may find that people spend a lot of money getting into a retirement village and then don't get to stay there very long because they actually need more assistance. There are specialised hospitals, rest homes, hospital care, dementia care, and also apartments, which can be, they're often serviced and they'll provide, all your vacuuming, meals provided, and also an emergency bell if needed. Okay, so when it comes to government assistance, the way that works is that once that assessment has been done, I should tell you how to access that assessment. So let's say you go and you go find mum and she hasn't been doing her housework, she hasn't been cleaning, she hasn't been taking as good of care of herself as she always had. At that point, it's a good idea to go and see the GP and say, right, I'd like to have an assessment for mum to see if she's entitled to any government funded services. So the assessor will come out, and as I said before, they'll test on what she can do, what she can't do, and then at the end of that, part of that is a means test, which is based on money in the bank and also assets. All personal care for anyone that requires it is provided completely government funded, but home help on the other side is assets tested or financial means tested. So if you are above a certain amount, and generally that mark is if you have a community services card, you'll be able to access home help. If you don't, you will need to find a provider that you can do that with privately. Right, so the reasons why the population is aging is because of um, the baby boomers that are moving through, but also because of the advances in medicine and also healthier lifestyles that people and seniors are living. There's an estimated 560,000 people, so that's 13% of the population, is currently over 65. And by 2031, 21% of the population it will be over 65, which is really interesting to think about because think about how that affects our world. For people that aren't involved or have relationships with seniors, which is a small portion of the population, there will be a percentage of people that get more frustrated because things like traffic is slower, getting through supermarkets is slower. You know, there's a whole lot of things that aging does that for the rest of the community may be, I guess, one of our future challenges. And from my point of view, that's why this course is so important. We need to be able to adapt to the to be able to live with this increasing aging population. So it's also going to be interesting as there's going to be a lot more people dealing with similar problems all at the same time. There's likely to be a lot of pressure that's put back on family, and family, of course, what they call it is the sandwich generation. You've got parents on one side and you've got kids on the other, and there's not much time left for you. So that's what they anticipate will happen. So let's just take a moment then and have a look at the activity on page 8. On page 8. And right, here we go. And have a look at the activity on page 8. We're just going to work through this. So those that can write in your workbooks, please do. Otherwise, maybe just make notes on the back of your assessment, on the paper provided. So, if you think about the information that we've just talked about, who will look after you when you're older? Now this is a bit of a, it's what you think at this point in time. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And there could be all sorts of things that change why you need assistance, you know, conditions and things like that. But let's just think now of what you think going forward when you're older. Who's going to look after you? Where will you live? And what quality of care will you receive? I find this really interesting, especially for me. I don't have kids. So who will look after me? Well, it's not going to be family. So I imagine it will be a healthcare provider of some sort. Where will you live? I'd like to think that I would live in a retirement village. I think I'll want and need that social side of things. And I like what retirement villages can provide. So hopefully I'm in a financial situation where I can afford that, because they are expensive or can be expensive to enter. And what quality of care will you receive? That's an interesting question, because for me, I'll make sure that I receive high quality care. As a trainer of healthcare, I would probably be one of the hardest people to look after. But also we need to think about what the world will look like at that point. Is it likely that we will have a highly trained workforce that will be able to provide quality care? So I'm not sure, but I'll do my best to make sure it's the best it can be. Right, so just take some time and have a think about that, about what it is, what aging you think will be like for you as you get older. So moving on to the next part, aspects of aging. So they say that age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. A quote from Mark Twain. So getting older is a fact of life. We can't stop it. Everyone ages differently. And as a caregiver, it's important that in your role, you don't make assumptions about what someone's capable of because they're older. When we age, we go through physical, psychological, emotional, and social changes. However, aging has a lot to do with our attitude. There's lots of positive things about aging. You know, all that time that you wished you'd had for years, you finally get. In saying that, there will be things that you need to adapt as part of aging. Things like there may be physical decline, so you'll need to be able to overcome that. Family might not live close anymore. It might be harder for you to drive there. So there's those things that you need to come up, you will come up against, or our seniors in the community do come up against and need to overcome. As a caregiver, it's really important that we are understanding of the changes that do occur in aging. So if you can, and you will often see it as a caregiver, the frustration that seniors experience because they're unable to do things that they've always been able to do. You know, things like doing up a button on a shirt that has always been so easy to do, because of the decline in dexterity, becomes really difficult. Or it might be things like a condition based where there's a decline in bone density because of osteoporosis, and they're more inclined for falls, which then provides a psychological side of, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go outside, I don't want to move because I don't want to fall. So there are lots of things to think about as a caregiver of what it's like to age, and that will then affect the way that you work with seniors. Also think about things such as the isolation, the loneliness, how your self-esteem might be affected due to aging. There's a lot of things there that that can be affected by the aging process. But this is where you come in, and you can make it a positive for your clients, or rather you can help them see the positives in the situation, or access things so that they don't have to feel isolated or lonely. A lot of the time for seniors, it's about having the tools to look after themselves. Seniors don't want to lose their independence, just like I'm sure you don't want to lose your independence. So helping them as much as you can to retain that is incredibly important. So there's a number of myths about aging. There's a lot of attitudes that people have, sometimes negative, that are directed towards older people. So, when you think about how many times have you heard someone's too old to learn new skills, or that now that they're 65, they must be ready to slow down. The truth is, when it comes to aging, slowing down is probably one of the worst things you can do. Keeping involved in the community is extremely important. But it's important that you are aware of the ageism that is around in our community. So there are many myths about aging, as I said, and these, please know, they're not my opinions, but they are community opinions. So first one's, all older people are the same. So basically categorizing people into one group. The truth is, just like any other generation, we come from a very diverse group of people. and people age in different ways. Men and women age the same way. So all people, and which isn't true, all people age differently, and it's a fact that women generally live longer than men. All older people are frail. Now, if you think of some of the Disney movies, some of the programs that children watch, how are older people generally portrayed in those? Generally, they're not portrayed as um, active, contributing people in the community. They are portrayed as frail, usually hunched over with the walking stick, and that's how aging is displayed, and that's what we learn. So that's that's the perception. And one of the ones which I think's extremely sad is older people have nothing to contribute, and the truth is they have more than our younger generations to contribute. The knowledge, the unpaid work that they do in voluntary roles, but they do make a very valuable contribution to our economy, but also to our cultures. So we touched on before ageing in place. So ageing in place is the ability to live in one's home or not to move from a rest home ward, which has been their home, into a hospital ward. So being able to still receive the quality of care that they need, but being able to stay in one place. So ageing in place has a number of benefits. People feel mentally and physically secure living in their home. There's the financial benefits of not having to move, not having to pay for a residential facility. The ability to stay close to family and friends, and they have access to familiar surroundings. And those things, as you age, you are less adaptable, and not having to go through a change can be an important part. So as a caregiver, it can be really important to focus on the positives. So if you have a client that is focusing on the negatives and needs encouragement and support to remain independent, it's about bringing them back to the positive side of aging. A lifetime of experience, of memories, the time to pursue interests and hobbies, the time to learn new skills, the time to spend with old and new friends, less influenced by what other people think, and less driven by materialism, not the need to get the latest phone. People remain age healthily, when they focus on the positive sides of aging, and also do things to help them remain healthy. Things like exercise, eating well, being involved in the community are all things that are going to help someone to remain well, and they'll also benefit from a self-worth, dignity and independence point of view. So as a caregiver, it's important that you are there to support the client in maintaining their self-esteem, to make them feel, to give them a sense of self-worth, and I guess to feel encouraged to participate in the community. Right, so Future Training Solutions has a very close working relationship with Homestead Senior Care. As you probably already know, you would have had made contact with the office before. So the philosophy of care that we work with Homestead is to relentlessly pursue positive ways to make seniors comfortable, secure in their homes. It's our belief that people should have the choice to be able to live at home as long as possible with the correct supports, the proper care. So our mission is to provide our clients, or Homestead clients, with outstanding care that helps maintain their quality of life, independence and dignity. And I don't know about you, but that's most certainly, as I age, that's what I want to be able to receive. At Homestead, and within a number of healthcare organisations. There's been a shift in the way healthcare has been provided. Healthcare used to be provided in a model which was known as medical model. That model of care was is very different than the way that we provide care now. In saying that, the medical model is still used throughout New Zealand, and when I explain it to you, I think you might be able to identify times where you may have been treated under that model. So the medical model is when the provider, so the doctor, the nurse, the caregiver, focuses on the illness and not on the person as an individual. So here is, I guess, a bit of how the medical model used to be. So it really focuses on the individual being the problem rather than the individual having a problem. They look at the individual only as a broken arm, a broken hip, having diabetes, whatever it might be. So medical model is focusing on the illness rather than seeing them as an individual that has this concern. So a good example of that is when I was 17, I had a car accident and went into Waikato Hospital. I had a badly damaged leg, and at that point, doctors came round on their normal rounds, and they came and stood at the end of the bed. They didn't acknowledge or say hello. They picked up the chart at the end of the bed and talked amongst themselves about my leg, and then they put it down and said goodbye, and off they went. So they were not focusing on me, Melissa, the person. They were focusing on me, or rather, just my injured leg. So as a person, how that makes you feel is, actually, how do you think it makes you feel? So it's a good time to reflect and ask the class this question. You know, if they were put in that situation, how would they like that? Because as a caregiver, they're also going to be involved in working with clients that have a certain illness, but also remembering the client's not always had that illness. So they have to treat that person as a person. They need to understand what it's like for that client. For me, how it made me feel was it affected me in a range of different ways. I was, as I say, only 17, in hospital alone. So it affected me holistically. And I felt a bit like a product being there rather than a person. And if anything, I did feel a bit like a problem when I was dealt with in that way. If they had approached it differently and they'd used the holistic model of care, it would have allowed me to feel like a bit more secure. And I'll just show you the holistic model of care. Right, here it is. So the holistic model of care is physical, emotional, mental, cultural, and spiritual. And the idea is that if something happens to you, let's say, for example, physically, then you are, here we go, physically, then you will also be affected emotionally, culturally, and spiritually, because they're all connected. So when I injured my leg, and it was a physical injury, it affected me emotionally. I was there on my own at 17. It affected me mentally. I was distraught at 17 about the scars that I'd have. It affected me culturally. I wasn't able to go out with my friends and do all the things that I always did. And it affected me spiritually. I had situations, those questioning of, well, this isn't fair. Why does this have to happen to me? all of those kind of things. So as you can see, something physical can affect you in all these different ways. In saying that, something like if someone passes away, which is an emotional, mental situation, can also then affect you physically. Some people get physically ill from the stress, the amount of emotion that they deal with. Spiritually, it can affect them. They may not participate in going to church or things that they may have always done. And it may affect them culturally, just stepping out of their social circles, not going to their, their weekly pottery class or whatever it might be. So as you can see, it affects people holistically, and so does aging, and the conditions that come with aging. Okay, there's also a couple of other different approaches to care that are important to be aware of. There's what's called restorative care, and there's another one called goal-orientated, outcome-focused care, and also person-centered care, which I'll go back to shortly. So restorative care is helping someone gain back previous abilities and functions. So if someone has broken an arm, broken a leg, it's the support that you give them during that time when they're unable to do things, but you're supporting them to get back to their independence. So when they can do certain things for themselves, like hang out the washing, that's when you stop doing things like hanging out the washing. And goal-oriented care or outcome-focused care is when you're focused on achieving a certain thing. So you're working towards someone being able to walk to the other side of the room, or you're working towards someone being able to hang out their washing again. So it's just the focus of the care has changed. Person-centered care, however, is how I think all care should be delivered. It's informing and involving the client in every part of care that's delivered, respecting the client's preferences, asking them, allowing them to make choices, engaging the client in the care process, treating the client with dignity, designing the care process to suit the client's needs, not the provider's needs, which is you, access to health information and providing that information, and having continuity of care, so being able to have the same caregiver every day. Right, so I'm going to take you through the Health and Disability Code of Rights, which is a really important document, something that in health must be used in relation to all care that's provided. So this all came about in 1988. I'm not sure if you remember the Cartwright inquiry, which was an inquiry that occurred because a number of women passed away due to cervical cancer. The reason why that happened was a doctor at the time believed that the treatment that they were providing for cervical cancer wasn't necessarily affected, and that in some situations cervical cancer would heal itself. So what he did, without informing the people involved, was he treated one group of people with the normal treatments provided in New Zealand at that time, and he didn't treat another group of people, and again, as I say, without those people dying. And as a result of that, a number of women passed away. So then the judge at that point highlighted that the medical industry within New Zealand was taking the law and decisions, personal decisions, into their own hands, and that they had decided that they had the right to decide for somebody else. Of course, this is not what it should be, and they designed the Health and Disability Code of Rights. So everywhere you go, in a hospital, a doctor's, a pharmacy, if it's home care provider or a rest home, they must provide their clients with the Code of Rights. Okay, so the Code of Rights, there are 10 of them, and to be fair, they're things that you would expect from, I think, anyone. They shouldn't need to be written down. They are basic expectations that everyone should have. The right to be respected, that if you have a specific cultural need, value or belief, that is respected. That you're treated, that you're talked to in a way that that fits with your values, and isn't rude. And I guess culture is a key part of this, because there's different perceptions on what's rude and what's not rude, depending on your culture. The right to fair treatment, freedom from discrimination, coercion, harassment, and exploitation. So that you can always make the choice yourself. Someone doesn't decide for you. That you're treated just like the person next door to you. And the third one is the treatment of dignity and independence. So if someone's assisting you with a shower, that they close the curtains, that they don't come in and take over from you in regards to a certain activity, and that you're allowed to try to do things for yourself. So as a care worker, it's important that you treat clients with respect, maintain fair treatment, provide dignity and independence, and encourage independence, and then fourth, to provide proper standards of care. So there's an expectation that you would have been trained in the role that you do, and that you're providing care in line with those. And things that you can do to make sure that you're adhering to that is attending regular education, and that you ask for assistance from your employer when you need it. Right, the fifth one, to receive open communication. And you can do this by checking that the client's understood you. It might be that you need to use a different type of language, like using pictures, maybe writing things down, whatever it might be, in order to be able to communicate that message. To receive the correct information, so you're not lying to a client, you've told them all the information they need in order to make a decision. And so this includes when you go to a doctor, being told how long you're going to wait. It includes disclosure of costs, and also explaining something in more detail, so advising what choices the client may have and the effect of them. So, for example, when we go in when Home Instead goes in and does a care consult, we provide all the options. So we tell them about government-funded care, how that works. We talk to them about Home Instead. We talk to them about rest home care, so that they have all the information in order to make a decision. So the seventh one is to have control over decisions. So it's up to you, up to the client to decide. They can say no or change their mind at any point, and no one else should force those decisions on them. So if they decide today they don't want a shower, that is completely their right, and we must not take that away from them. The eighth one, to receive any additional support you may need. They have the right to have someone with them to give them support when receiving information from health professionals. So if they want to have an advocate with them, or if they want to have someone with them if they are looking to make a complaint, that they have that right. The ninth one is directly linked to teaching and research situations. So your client has the right to be asked before somebody else comes in and observes in a teaching and research situation, and they have the right to decline that. So as a caregiver, what you can do is encourage them to ask questions. And the last one, which is really important, especially for elderly, is to have the right to complain. A lot of people don't complain. They should complain. They don't. And services don't improve because of it. So we see complaint as an opportunity to improve services. Right, so this is what the Code of Rights brochure looks like. It is provided, it should be in every healthcare provider's building pack, whatever it is. You should be able to access this. As a caregiver, you have a responsibility to make sure that all care is provided in line with this, as well as the care that someone else might be providing. I think the interesting thing to consider is what when we think about purchasing a new fridge, the type of service that you would expect would be completely in line with the Code of Rights. So the type of service, if you were purchasing a fridge, the type of service that you would expect would be all the things that we talk about here in regards to the Code of Rights. So you would expect to be treated with respect. You would expect to be treated fairly and to be offered the same deals that the person before you got offered. To be treated with dignity and independence. To have proper standards of service, that the person who is telling you about the fridge actually knows about the fridge, and also then to receive open communication, that they're actually listening to what you need and not trying to sell you a stereo instead of a fridge, that they're giving you correct information and actually does what they say it can do, that you have control over decisions, you're not being pressured into doing this, it's up to you, that if you want someone else to be there with you, they can be, that if they're going to have a trainee serve you, that you've been informed about that, and if you want to make a complaint, you have the right to complain. So these are basic service expectations that should always be met. Okay, so let's just go through a case study, and I want you to tell me what rights you think have not been met. So the complaint was a complaint was made by a woman about the services provided to her father at a rest home. The complaint was on the basis. The complaint was made by a woman about the services provided to her father at a rest home. The complaint was on the basis that the hospital section of the rest home, 1, used padding for her father's incontinence management and did not use a catheter or urodome. 2, her father had broken pressure areas on his buttocks and a weeping ulcer on his left leg above the ankle. 3, he was left sitting idle in his chair, half asleep during occasions when there were visitors at the rest home. 4, on one occasion when she visited the rest home, she found her father slumped in his chair with dry, crusty food in his mouth and eyes full of yellow, dry matter, and an appearance of neglect. 5, he was found by his wife lying on his back with a cup of tea left beside his bed. 6, an armrest was missing from his wheelchair and had not been replaced. 7, information concerning his condition was never offered by staff. And 8, the registered nurse cover at the rest home and training of staff were of concern. So, what rights do you think were missed? So let's just go back to those rights and see what they didn't provide. So do you feel that he was treated with respect? Do you feel that he received fair treatment? Well, we don't know that it was unfair. We don't know that other residents weren't treated similarly. Was it within expectation though? No, he should have received much higher service. Was he treated with dignity and independence? No. To have proper standards, from what we can see so far without it being investigated? No. Did he receive open communication? No. Did he receive the correct information? Well, they weren't provided with any information for it to be incorrect, so we can't judge on that. Did he have control over decisions? Again, wasn't offered for that. 8, did he receive any additional support? There's no indication to say he didn't. And then number 9, to receive teaching and research information. It wasn't that type of complaint. And 10, to have the right to complain, and they have. So it looks like probably the first 5 are correct. And it just shows you, how the rights can be broken, the type of things that can occur, and so on. So something to think about, right? Right, so the last bit for today, you have rights too. Okay, so as a caregiver, it's important that you also get treated with respect, both by your employer and by clients, that you're treated fairly, that your employment agreement and workplace policies protect you from all forms of discrimination, that you're treated with dignity and good faith, that you have a safe working environment, that you're communicated and listened to by your workplace, that you're provided with information that you need to do your job, that you're provided with opportunities to professionally develop the necessary skills to do the job, that you're provided with support, workplace democracy, and the opportunity to join a union. Right, so that is the information for today. So next time we're going to go through the care plan. So today then, what I'll get you to do is to do questions 2 to 7 and also question 9. So today I'll get you just to do question 2 and 3. Miss question 1. And the reason for that is because it asks you to use the sample care plan, and we haven't gone through that as yet, so we'll do that next time. So questions 2 and 3, when you return today, also please review the information within the basic book, just to give you a further understanding. Please feel welcome to give us a call if you have any questions, and that is our session for today. Thank you.